Hello, watch enthusiasts. Now, today I'd like to talk about a few things that have come up in the news in terms of watch news recently. I'd like to start with the new Omega Seamaster Planet Ocean ceramic. So that's the sort of dark version of the already very popular Planet Ocean. Now, this watch, which Omega have named the Deep Black, is, I suppose, the Seamaster's answer to the Speedmaster coaxial Dark Side of the Moon, which is of course the ceramic version of the coaxial Seamaster, which is I suppose the modern interpretation of the Speedmaster Professional. Because of course this watch, the Planet Ocean, was meant to be the equivalent watch in terms of its presence in the line. So if you see what I mean when I say that the coaxial Speedmaster was meant to bring the Speedmaster Professional into the 21st century, this Planet Ocean was supposed to bring the Seamaster into the 21st century. So I suppose it's appropriate there is a ceramic alternative to the standard steel or titanium versions. Now this watch comes in 4 variants, but I suppose there are really only 3 types. So there are the red and red and black and blue and black versions, such as the ones you see on the screen here, which have the caoutchouc style bezel, which was shown at Baselworld this year, where they've inset this high quality rubber into the ceramic bezel to give a more vivid colour. Now, I'm not massively taken by these versions because I find the bright colours to be a bit overpowering. And make the whole watch look a bit toy-like, which it doesn't complement the fact that these watches are very expensive. They're around the £8,000 mark. Another version of this watch, which I find particularly attractive, albeit it will be an acquired taste, is the Sedna Gold and ceramic version, which has, of course, these gold accents around it, which in some ways is very gaudy and wouldn't suit most attire. It does have something which the bright coloured versions don't have. However, this does come on a leather strap, which I'd never advise on a dive watch because, you know, at some point you're going to want to swim with it or, you know, something of that type, or have a bath with it, and you won't be able to because of the leather strap. It'll just become an inconvenience, really. Now, the version of this watch which I would personally have if I were to buy this piece would be the all black, because I find it to be the most classic, the most simple, and the most elegant of the lot. Not to mention the fact that it's not as gaudy as the other versions. I do like the fact that it has the ceramic crowns, which makes them also very scratch resistant. Now these watches feature an 8900 or 8906 caliber movement from Omega, which means that it will be very very accurate, and it has the coaxial escapement, which means that there will be less wear on the movement over time. Equally, this watch is a GMT, but with a dive bezel, so you get the best of both worlds, I suppose. But while I'm talking about the case of the watch as well, I'd like to mention one of the most major advantages to having a ceramic case, and in this case is zirconia, so zirconium dioxide. And that is the fact that this watch is extremely scratch resistant. So it'll be as scratch resistant as your bezel or your crystal on a standard steel watch, meaning that it'll show wear less over time. Now, in terms of straps, this watch is offered on I believe a rubber-lined nylon style strap with a deployment or a deployant, depending on what you'd like me to say. That brings us on to, though it's a nice strap, that does bring us on to the reason why I probably wouldn't buy this watch. And that's because a bracelet, for example, on this watch would be too brittle. A bracelet, if you were to smack it against something, would shatter due to the brittle nature of ceramic. In a dive watch, this would alarm me. Wearing a watch which effectively, if I smacked against something underwater, could shatter and let in water. So I'd rather have a steel case which I could repolish over time if it did get scratched and wouldn't break quite so easily. Now the second set of watches which I'd like to talk about today is the new range of Panerai Luminors. And they've actually brought out quite a few new models, which is rare for Panerai. And the one which really has caught my attention is the extra thin version of the Luminor. So the Luminor is known for being extremely thick, heavy, big watch. But this watch, at only 10.5mm thick, takes the whole Luminor package and makes it much more manageable for a smaller wrist. As you can see from this photograph, it is ridiculously thin, with these drop-down lugs which wrap around the wrist much better than the Luminor usually does with its protruding caseback. Now, I find this watch an interesting paradox, because it is on the one hand making the whole watch more manageable for people with smaller wrists, but at the same time it's only water resistant to 3 ATM, which means that it's utterly useless as a dive watch, which is what it was intended as. So I'd say this is more of a dressy sort of Panerai. Now these watches come in manually wound steel versions, along with automatic steel versions with micro rotors, which have a standard looking movement from Panerai. The manually wound ones are 3-day movements, so they will last a bit longer between winds, and the automatic ones have a micro rotor, which is a particularly elegant winding solution, which I really do like. Red gold versions of these watches are also available and are identical in terms of specifications, but the difference with these watches is obviously the red gold has that strong colour, along with the fact that their movements are skeletonized. So as you can see here, this manually wound one is much more visible, so you can see the spring along with all the gears, which does look great, but I do like that sort of classic Panerai mainly bridged look over the movements, which is unique to this brand. Now, as you can see, the automatic version in red gold is also highly decorated and skeletonized, just to make it more appealing to the type of customer who's going to buy this watch. Now, not being a proper water-resistant watch, I can see this watch being worn as a second watch to the standard Luminor, for example. Hence, having a red gold version makes perfect sense, to where this is more of a dress watch to the steel version's sports watch appeal. Now, bizarrely, the Carbotech version of this watch did very little for me, as I'm not a massive fan of ceramic Panerais. However, the version which really caught my eye was this version. This is a new, slimmer version of the Luminor, but not as slim as the extra slim, at 13.2mm thick. So it's still a beefy watch, but not too big. Now, this watch actually has an altogether new movement for Panerai, which is automatic, and I think adds to this watch as sort of a new Luminor, and one which I would consider buying. Equally, it does have a 300-meter water resistance, which really brings it up to par with other dive watches. Now, on a very different note to my my interest in these new and beautiful Panerais, I'm afraid I do have to talk about the Shinola situation. So Shinola, for those who don't know them, are a brand based in Detroit who produce these wristwatches under the pretext of being made by hand in Detroit. And you know, they're not my thing. I don't particularly like them, just for an aesthetic, aspect from my perspective. But recently they have got into some quite serious trouble. Now, this trouble has arisen from the fact that their watches do state they are made in Detroit, and as various people have said, you're not really allowed to say that unless the parts are actually manufactured in Detroit, or in America at least. As most of the parts in these watches were manufactured elsewhere, Switzerland and China, I suspect. Of course, they got into an immense amount of trouble, and they've had to remove 2 slogans of theirs as a result of this issue, because it is allegedly misleading clients. Now, if I'm honest about the situation, I think Shinola deserve it. I think that brands should be utterly upfront about their products, and clear about the technicalities about where they were made and how they were made. So I think it is a good thing that authorities are sort of stamping down on this this occurrence in a brand, because I know that the Swiss policies about what can be said to be Swiss made are actually getting stricter at the moment. Because it used to be that it was 60% of the watch had to be made in Switzerland, whereas now they're revising these laws to make for higher quality pieces, which I agree with too. Anyway, so those are my thoughts on the Shinola situation and on the two new watches which have really caught my attention. But thank you very much for watching. Do please like, share and subscribe, and if you have any questions to ask, then feel free to drop me an email at questionsforatwg@gmail.com. Now that's in the description if you want to email me. Thanks very much for watching. This is I'm on the Watch Guy, over and out.